This is not getting discussed on the mainstream media. Not only are they wrong legally, but the fact that they would do this is outrageous. This is an overreaction and really nonsense. How would you react if this was your son or your daughter? It's the offense of knowing the truth. It's the offense of having an alternate worldview. Saying God bless you to someone is not a violation of the law.
Welcome back to Hannity. Breaking news out of Washington. A bombshell admission by the IRS. The tax agency is officially apologizing for subjecting conservative groups to additional scrutiny during the 2012 election.
We applied for our tax status in 2010. We waited 18 months. They sent these letters that wanting a lot of information they weren't allowed to ask us.
Send us your Facebook pages, your Twitter pages. And I said, does that include personal pages? And they said everything. They wanted to know your personal relationships with politicians and political parties. And they made an insinuation like, look, it can be considered perjury if you omit things from the IRS, and that carries with it jail time. I'm a pregnant stay-at-home mother on one income. I thought, oh my goodness, I'm not doing anything.
They used names like Tea Party or Patriots, and they selected cases simply because the application had those names in the title. That was wrong. The IRS would like to apologize for that.
Oh, okay, thank you. I appreciate. Wait a minute! I didn't realize apologies were sufficient in IRS-related issues.
Tell us about the derivation of your organization's name, especially if you had Liberty in there.
What the IRS did here is outrageous.
It's an evil agency, and I hope the American people will get up in arms about it.
If, in fact, IRS personnel engaged in the kind of practices that have been reported on and were intentionally targeting conservative groups, then that's outrageous.
If this just isn't a gathering of an enemies list, I don't know what is.
The president needs to stop the if and get to the reality here that this was a complete misuse of the Office of the Internal Revenue Service.
Has a crime been committed here?
Have you solved the case of the IRS and how this came to be?
Based upon everything I've seen, the case is solved. And if it were me, I would wrap this case up and move on.
With this endless parade of distractions and political posturing and phony scandals, Washington's taken its eye off the ball.
Phony scandals, right? Well, I'm holding a document that was released yesterday that has 33 of our clients on it, Christian pro-life organizations, conservative organizations as well. They're told that they're engaged in inappropriate propaganda, that they've taken action that is, quote, has rhetoric that is, quote, anti-Obama. That's what the actual language of the document. I'm holding the document in my hand. Our television camera's in here today looking at this. There was an unbelievable hearing in Washington, D.C. And, Jordan, let's get a quick report on this. More documents coming out. It is unbelievable what is in these documents. What the content of these documents is outrageous. But Congress yesterday really let the acting commissioner Werfel get an earful of what they were concerned about, which is an agency that is still out of control. And even letters with Lois Lerner's name on it released in August of this year when she had been put on administrative leave in June.
Yeah, the latest letter we had received, one of our groups, was May 22nd of 2013. But now there are letters coming out from August where they were still at least using Lois Lerner's stationery and signature machine if she had something like that. And so the idea, again, people have said, well, she was put on administrative leave and now she's not getting paid. That's not true. When you get put on administrative leave, you get paid by the federal government. And, Dad, what was even more interesting that we found out in this oversight hearing is that even groups that were approved were tracked.
Right.
Lois Lerner ordered the tracking of approved 501c4 conservative groups out of an office in Dallas. So add another IRS headquarters to this scandal.
At the end of the day, we're not stupid. We're pretty smart people. The American people are smart. You get what's going on here. This is targeting Christians. And let me tell you about Lois Lerner and the FEC. You know, she used to be with the FEC, the Federal Election Commission. There was an investigation of a well-known Christian ministry. She asked in this investigation, because of alleged political activities, what the contents of prayer activity that this particular Christian minister had with Oliver North. What were the contents of your prayers? So now when we see those same questions coming up now, what are the contents of your prayers? Why are we surprised? Why are we shocked that the IRS is asking them when she asked those same questions at the Federal Election Commission, the FEC? Different initials, same questions. What's the content of your prayers? Again, We're really also promoting at the same time here our work with Pastor Saeed. BeHeardProject.com, BeHeardProject.com to sign on to that letter to the Iranian president. And if you want to sign on and stand up and say enough of the IRS abuse, ACLJ.org. That's ACLJ.org or 1-877-989-2255. ACLJ.org or 877-989-2255.
The Internal Revenue Service scandal is getting worse. Now there are new revelations of the IRS targeting Tea Party and conservative groups, disturbing admissions that the IRS scheme was even more partisan and more coordinated than previously thought. The American Center for Law and Justice represents 41 groups in a federal lawsuit challenging the IRS. We intend to get to the bottom of this unlawful and unconstitutional scheme. An out-of-control IRS that intentionally targeted conservative organizations, violating their First Amendment rights. Stand with the ACLJ now. Sign on to our petition to end IRS abuse. Add your name by calling 1-877-989-2255. That's 1-877-989-2255 or online, aclj.org.
So what do you think Ms. Lerner meant when she said Tea Party matter very dangerous, in particular, very dangerous?
I will say this, I don't know what she meant, but I was concerned when I saw the email, and it's for that reason that I flagged it for the IG and for the Accountability Review Board.
Tea Party, very dangerous. Conservative groups, what are the contents of your prayer? Pro-life groups, your position is too emotive and not based on fact. And by the way, that is now in these IRS documents. We had them in the questions, but now in the internal documents from the Internal Revenue Service, which includes 33 of our clients, the documents list these same type of allegations and inquisitions. They want this information. I've got a very simple question I want to ask our audience here. Do you feel like you should not be in a situation where we are funding people that are taking the Fifth Amendment to the United States Constitution, that are running the IRS tax-exempt division, which is over churches, pro-life groups, prayer centers? That's who runs this, folks, stuff. And we now know they're targeting these organizations, and we are paying Lois Lerner. She's the former head of tax-exempt, and she was asked to resign. Jordan, that became a big issue. In fact, let me play, if we can get the bite up on this one, where she was specifically asked. The question came out yesterday from one of the congressmen, number 15, to the acting commissioner Werfel. This was the exact question that was asked. Take a listen, and take a listen to the answer.
Did you ask Ms. Lerner to resign?
I don't want to answer the question unless I got...
You have an obligation to answer that question as a member of this committee, else you will face criminal sanctions as a result of it. Did you ask her to resign?
I'm being told by my attorney who's sitting behind me that I cannot answer that question under the Privacy Act. I potentially can answer that question.
Why is that a Privacy Act, what you did? How is that a Privacy Act? I want your attorney then to be put under oath and get up here and explain to me why you are not answering my question as to what you did in regards to this investigation.
Mr. Chairman, will the gentleman yield?
No, I won't yield. I want an answer.
Time has expired. Mr. Chairman, will the gentleman's time expired, and will he yield for a question?
No,
it ended
I
about
will
2
not
minutes
yield.
ago.
I want an answer
Mr. Chairman,
to the question.
point of information.
You have an obligation.
Chairman, point of
I
information.
will hold you accountable. I will hold you accountable.
Mr.
As
Chairman,
a member
point
of
of
this
information.
You know, I just want to point out that Danny Werfel has a bad attorney. Well, we know the IRS is full of a bunch of bad attorneys at the top and here in Washington, D.C., because I'm reading a ABC News story to you folks back from May 23rd, 2013, 13 days after Lois Lerner made that statement. This is quoting Senator Charles Grassley of Iowa. He was told by the acting IRS commissioner that Lois Lerner refused to resign when he asked her to, and so they had to put her on administrative leave. So this new acting commissioner thinks he can tell a senator. The senator then tells ABC News in May, and then here we go, fast forward into September, and now it's a Privacy Act issue? when this was public information? Do you realize we've got an acting commissioner at the IRS who needs to go as well? It's time for Danny Werfel to be set aside if this administration is taking it serious, because this is a guy who you could tell, you don't have to be watching the video, doesn't have the tone or the capabilities of running an organization that needs America's trust, the Internal Revenue Service.
Well, and you can take it a step further than that. You know, they gave kind of an all clear back 30 days after. Remember their 30-day review? He gave an all clear. He hadn't seen any of these documents, so he goes, that's the first I heard of this document. I didn't know this document existed. Senator or Congressman, we didn't realize you had that document. They got those documents from the IRS, which means he was not even reviewing what was being sent to the commission, or his lawyers weren't. Someone is not telling the truth. And I want to be clear to our radio audience and our television audience that's here today. I don't like the idea that the United States government is telling Christian organizations or conservative organizations what the contents of their prayer are, that their advocacy is too emotive and not factual based. And they did that, by the way, specifically on the life issue. I don't think that's the way the system's supposed to work. And I've about had it. So we're in federal court on that. We're amending our complaint again, and we're taking direct action. This is where you come in. We've got a petition that's up right now, and thousands of people have signed it. And it's very simple and really very straightforward. It says, end the IRS abuse. Part of that abuse, folks, is we're paying for these people that have taken the Fifth Amendment and that we're targeting these organizations, pro-life groups, conservative groups, Christian organizations. And they are the groups that are in charge of tax-exempt organizations. Those of you that are listening or watching right now on television, that means your church. These are the groups that are handling it. We want that abuse ended. 123,293 people have signed that petition. Almost 125,000 people are saying, end this abuse, get to the bottom of this, and get to the truth. ACLJ.org or 1-877-989-2255. So it's ACLJ.org or 877-989-2255. By the way, coming up in the next segment of the program, our friend Herman Cain is going to be joining us, which is good because Herman Cain was mentioned among 4 other individuals, names you're going to know: Sarah Palin, Newt Gingrich, Rick Perry, Chris Christie. All these groups, all these individuals named in the IRS as a reason for these organizations to be looked at. Pro-Israel groups also targeted in this. So ask yourself, what's really going on here? And why are we paying for this? And why is this abuse continuing? Why is Lois Lerner signing letters 2.5, 3 months after she was put on administrative leave? And then ask yourself the question, why are we still paying Lois Lerner, who said this was low-level agents in Cincinnati? And boy, this is Washington, D.C. She's not telling the truth. No wonder she took the Fifth Amendment. ACLJ.org or 1-877-989-2255. That's ACLJ.org or 877-989-2255. We're taking your calls. Let's go right to the phones.
Yep, let's go to Cindy in Illinois, line 2. Cindy, welcome to Jay Sekulow Live. You're on the air.
Hi, Cindy.
Hey, thanks for taking my call.
Sure.
I was just wondering, why can't they use previous statements, that man saying that she refused to resign?
Right.
Why can't they use that instead of putting these liars on the stand and having
Well, you can use them in a contempt proceeding, and the question is, did she waive her Fifth Amendment privilege, which we think she did. But let me play for you a dialogue between Danny Werfel, the acting commissioner, and Congressman Tom Reed about those emails you're talking about. Number 8.
We have some emails that I'd like to go over with you, where Ms. Lerner is addressing an email to her subordinates. And you see in the email it says, Tea Party matter, very dangerous. Have you seen that email before?
I have.
And have you talked with anybody in regards to that email as to what that email was intended to mean?
I did. I asked questions.
Who'd you ask questions of?
I asked questions of members of my leadership team.
Who are those leadership members? Names.
Okay.
I'd like that answer, folks. That was his answer. Laugh, okay. This is the guy that's supposed to be coming in to clean up this mess, which apparently is not what's happening at all. Jordan, those hearings yesterday were pretty big in scope, to say the least.
Yes, because it shows what we all know. The administration intentionally placed someone incapable of running the IRS to clean up the IRS to protect their political cronies. The more and more I see into this, the more and more I believe that this was the work of the top Obama campaign team. This
Including
was
Stephanie Cutter.
And we now know, we have articles, we have the Darrell Issa report, that they were, all these IRS officials thought that they were taking the president's marching orders. They're not supposed to take partisan marching orders from political rallies. See, that's not the IRS's job. Their job is to enforce the law. The President of the United States can go on a political tour and criticize laws, say there needs to be laws that are changed, and say, I don't like these groups. But the laws have to change before the IRS does anything about it. Instead, what we saw here, Dad, I mean, when you go through this, I know Herman Cain will be joining us. The IRS here, I mean, they were reaching for any possible way to keep these groups delayed until the 2012 elections were over, hoping that some would withdraw. We represent clients that have withdrawn, and hoping that others would just be shut down. And we have plenty that have barely survived.
Listen to this dialogue between Congressman Kelly and, again, Acting Commissioner Werfel, this time holding people accountable for targeting these groups. Number 3.
Who has been held accountable for anything that's happened so far in the IRS?
Well,
and this is not, I mean, some people describe it as a phony scandal. It's not a phony scandal. The only thing I see phony so far is the investigation of it. Tell me, where exactly are we on this?
I've said it earlier. All 5 levels of leadership, from the commissioner down to the SES in charge, are no longer in their jobs.
I understand that.
Okay, that's one.
But they're still
2,
working somewhere. They're still working somewhere. They're still being paid by taxpayers. Is it a yes or no?
Not in all cases.
Not in all cases, because one of them retired. But everybody else on that list is still, in fact, being paid for by us, and they're just been reassigned. That's what the government's doing here. You caught the wrongdoers, and you caught them in the act, and instead of taking action, which would be terminating them, what do? Move them to other divisions. Move them to other agencies, and continue to still pay them. That's what's taking place right now. If you've had enough of this, and a lot of you have, 123,000, almost 125,000 of you have, you go to your phones right now, add your name to this petition, end this IRS abuse, and stop paying these people that took this aggressive action against Christian organizations and conservative organizations. 877-989-2255. That's 1-877-989-2255 or aclj.org. So aclj.org or 1-877-989-2255. We've got a lot more ahead, including a preview of our brand new movie, Tax Invasion. We'll be back with more in just a moment.
The Internal Revenue Service scandal is getting worse. Now there are new revelations of the IRS targeting Tea Party and conservative groups, disturbing admissions that the IRS scheme was even more partisan and more coordinated than previously thought. The American Center for Law and Justice represents 41 groups in a federal lawsuit challenging the IRS. We intend to get to the bottom of this unlawful and unconstitutional scheme. An out-of-control IRS that intentionally targeted conservative organizations, violating their First Amendment rights. Stand with the ACLJ now. Sign on to our petition to end IRS abuse. Add your name by calling 1-877-989-2255. That's 1-877-989-2255 or online, aclj.org.
Welcome back to the broadcast, everyone. As I mentioned, we've got a brand new documentary film coming out called Tax Invasion, and it talks about what's happened with this IRS case and its targeting of conservative and Christian organizations. In this movie, you're going to hear from people like Senator Rand Paul, Dr. Ben Carson, Herman Cain, Michelle Bachmann, Senator Ted Cruz, and others. You're going to hear from businessmen that have been directly impacted by the new revelations of the IRS, as well as a Christian ministry in Washington, D.C., that was also visited by the Internal Revenue Service. Take a look.
Every year, Americans spend about $500 billion on tax compliance. Yep. As we like to say in Texas, that doesn't produce a single truck or tortilla. It's just wasted.
Are we going to have a nation that's for of and by the people, or a nation that is totally controlled by the government?
If men were angels, there'd be no need of masters. We don't have angels running these bureaucracies.
Whether you're a Republican, a Democrat, or an independent, they're horrified at this because no one wants to think, you know what, I supported one candidate, the other guy won, and now I'm going to be audited or punished or have my business closed down.
I was in our building and the knock came on the door, and the first thing I saw was a badge, IRS. Sir, I need to speak with you.
An agency that's supposed to be working for the people was really working against the people.
There are more words in the IRS code than there are in the Bible.
The very foundation of our government was the idea that we could criticize the government when we disagree,
That's what First Amendment free speech is all about. The Founding Fathers had a very different vision than what the Internal Revenue Service has.
Attempts to turn this into a scandal have failed.
Our good friend Herman Cain is on the phone, and Herman, thanks for being on here. And you are a notoriety with the IRS, evidently, because we've got the document from the IRS, and there it says, event with Herman Cain, and that made this group suspect. Welcome to the broadcast.
Jay, happy to be with you. You know, I didn't know that I was a menace to society. I guess that's what that means, since they basically pointed me out in that report. Good to be with you today.
Well, you know, Herman, we got this information yesterday, and our information in our lawsuit continues to develop. But this idea that you spoke at an event, and therefore this group is suspect. You're an American citizen. You're a businessman. You're a leader. You're an economist. You're also involved in the political process. The fact that you're named specifically here, how does that make you feel as an American, that the government is doing this?
Well, it makes me feel as if I'm trying to be intimidated into not being able to express my views. And that's one of the things that's great about this country, and that is you should be able to freely express your views. It's called freedom of speech, and that's exactly what it is. But in this particular case, singling me out, here's what's ironic about this, Jay. In 2010, when they put my name in there because I was participating with this Tea Party group, I was not a declared candidate for president. I had not even put together an exploratory committee. I was doing a nightly radio show on one station. I wasn't even syndicated out of Atlanta on WSB. And for my name to be put there because I was a threat, the only thing that I can envision is that it may have had something to do with the fact that back in the early 1990s, I challenged Bill Clinton on Hillary Care. So it really surprised me to see my name actually spelled out in that report that had 162 organizations identified. But that just shows you the degree to which liberals will go, as well as those that are interested in protecting the political class will go, using the power of the IRS in order to try to silence people in terms of not criticizing what's going on.
I'm going to put up for our television audience that's going to see this in a week or so the actual document highlighting the number 11, which is the Roane County Tea Party group where you spoke. Let me read for everybody, though, what it says. This is in the comments by the Internal Revenue Service agent reviewing, and this was at the Exempt Organization Divisional Headquarters. This is out of Washington, D.C. Right. So this is what they said. Political campaign activity, unclear. They're talking about the group. No, this is unbelievable, folks. No real educational activities or content apparent. Development needed. Hosted Herman Cain event. That is the basis upon which this group was targeted by the IRS. They view that when you talk about the Constitution and free speech, Herman, that's not educational? I guess that's the view of the government these days.
That's their view. And the thing about it is they didn't host a Herman Cain event. It was their event, and they asked me to be a speaker at their event. It wasn't a Herman Cain event. That's where they are dead wrong. But this just shows you how low they were stooped to try to be able to pin something on people. And they're looking for certain keywords like compensation, or they want to try to say that they were lobbyists or that I was some sort of lobbyist. I was just simply expressing my views as an American citizen.
You know, Jordan, you've got a question for Herman. Go ahead.
Well, because I got a couple events. I'm going up to Ohio this weekend to speak in an event in Columbus, Ohio. Then I'm heading up to New Hampshire, and I'm speaking. They're not paying me. They're not handling it. You know, I'm going there to talk about the work that we're doing with these IRS cases. One of our clients, actually, who's been targeted. And Herman, the idea here that, in a sense, it's like these groups would be afraid to start inviting speakers like all of us, like you, like my dad or me, because if you invite somebody like Herman Cain, you may get flagged not by the IRS just for your process trying to get approved, but we found out yesterday in the hearing, Herman, that the IRS has also listed these groups and put them together, that they are tracking from a Dallas office to see if they're messing up at all after they get approved.
And see, this is what they're trying to do, Jordan. Number one, they want the groups to be intimidated and not invite people like you and me and your dad. Secondly, they're trying to intimidate us into accepting these invitations.
Right.
And it's basically to try to suppress free speech and to suppress criticism. Someone once said, you know, when the people get to the point that they fear that government is tyranny, we've got to turn that around where the government fears us. That's freedom. And that's why we are not afraid to step out. And that's why I'm glad that we have, like, the Tea Party Patriots and all the organizations that you all represent, because these people are not afraid to speak out. But in today's environment, that means that we're going to have to fight.
You know, Herman, when we're fighting, we're actually going to amend the complaint one more time. We haven't got a government's answer yet. We've had to amend just to keep up with the information that's coming out. We're continuing to amend the lawsuit. But let me ask you another question here, and just kind of a summary answer from you on this. When you look at this situation and the scandal, and you're a guy that's been successful in business, in politics, in broadcasting, but you look at this scandal, how deep do you think this is, and how significant of a scandal is this?
I believe that the IRS scandal is the deepest scandal in Washington, D.C., because the culture at the IRS has been growing for decades. It didn't just start. You can look at the Benghazi cover-up. That's a year old, and it indicates that there are some systemic problems within the State Department. If you look at what's happening in the EPA, that's of recent because of the attitude of the Obama administration. But the IRS is the deepest scandal, I think, in Washington, D.C., because it's been around so long, but more importantly, a lot of people have allowed some of the things to happen to them because it's kind of like when the pain stops, you're so glad that it's gone that you're not going to make a stink about it. So I think that this is probably the most significant one that we are looking at, and I'm so glad that you and your organization are taking it on and that some people are not afraid to speak out.
Herman Cain, we appreciate you being with us. Thanks so much for your comments. Always appreciate your insights, my friend. Thanks for being with us.
Let's keep up the fight, Jay.
We'll do it.
My pleasure. Bye-bye.
You've heard now from us. You've heard from Herman Cain. You've heard from leaders around the country. It's time to end the IRS abuse, and this is where you come in. Go to aclj.org. Sign that petition right there. aclj.org. End this IRS abuse. We shouldn't be paying these people. Or you can call us at 1-877-989-2255. So it's aclj.org to sign the petition, or 1-877-989-2255 to take action now. That's going to do it for the broadcast this week. We will see you next week.
The Internal Revenue Service scandal is getting worse. Now there are new revelations of the IRS targeting Tea Party and conservative groups, disturbing admissions that the IRS scheme was even more partisan and more coordinated than previously thought. The American Center for Law and Justice represents 41 groups in a federal lawsuit challenging the IRS. We intend to get to the bottom of this unlawful and unconstitutional scheme, an out-of-control IRS that intentionally targeted conservative organizations, violating their First Amendment rights. Stand with the ACLJ now. Sign on to our petition to end IRS abuse. Add your name by calling 1-877-989-2255. That's 1-877-989-2255 or online, aclj.org.